Hi everybody, you're all very welcome to our latest webinar, and I'm delighted today to be joined by dietitian Sarah Keogh. Before we get into our conversation, I just want to give you a little bit of information. So just a reminder that we have the Irish Life Workplace Fitness Challenge running at the moment. For anybody involved in the challenge, this webinar is going to help keep you motivated and fuel your body over the next few weeks. So remember, the company with the highest average number of steps will win a €10,000 donation to their charity of choice and will be crowned My Life's Fittest Company 2020. To keep everyone motivated, we also have an individual target of 250,000 steps, and anyone who reaches this by the end of the challenge will be entered into a draw for one of 100 Fitbits. Finally, guys, just to mention that our third webinar in the series will be Financial Well-being with financial advisor Kevin Clark on the 7th of October at 12 p.m. So Sarah, I'm delighted to be having this conversation today all around the subject of nutritional well-being, but you might give listeners maybe just a little bit more of a background on yourself and also our conversation, what we're going to discuss today.
Well, thanks for inviting me to this. I'm really looking forward to it. I think the fitness challenge just looks amazing. I'll be very impressed with all the people who are going to hit 250,000 steps. So fair play to them. I was saying to you before I come on, I managed to break my toe last week, so I have a really good excuse not to make it this week. So I suppose for me, I'm a dietitian. I'm a CORA registered dietitian. So that means that I suppose CORA registration isn't something most people are familiar with yet. But I think a lot of us who are interested in nutrition would know that there's lots of different places where, people are giving out nutrition advice, and some are, a little more reliable than others. So what the Irish government did there about 5 years ago is they put a national register together, and people had to send in their qualifications and they were assessed. And if you were at the high level that they had set, you were onto this register, which is called CORA registration. So that's why you might see people with the letters RD after their name, and that means registered dietitian. So it's a good way to check if you're looking for nutrition advice, is the person you're speaking to really well qualified? And you can actually look up on the register for that. So it's really just handy for people who aren't sure. So I suppose for me, I'm a dietitian. I'll be nearly 25 years a dietitian at this stage, so I've been doing it for a while. And I've worked over the years in lots of areas. So I worked in cancer for a good few years, and in a lot of hospitals. But in the last few years, I've been doing a lot more in terms of workplace wellness. And really, I suppose by the time people hit the hospital, there's an awful lot already gone wrong. And for me, prevention just looks like a huge thing to really go into. And that's why I love today, we're going to talk about kind of nutrition and habits and, exercise habits as well, and just how we can build those in just to have a healthier lifestyle.
Yeah, it sounds like we have the right person with us today to give us all the nutrition advice we will need, especially over the past few months. I've noticed myself, Sarah, as we would work mainly in the corporate well-being sector also, that one of the things that comes up time and time again is some of the bad habits that have crept into our routines through COVID restrictions, etc. And I'd like to know from you, what are you seeing in your world of nutrition, and what advice would you have for people to try and get rid of some of those bad habits?
Well, I think, Mark, you're on the right track with that. And I think within about 6 weeks of COVID hitting, working with Irish Life, we did a seminar called Healthy Habits at Home. And it was really targeting exactly that problem. So I think for lots of people, a lot of their healthy habits were built in and around work. So they might have walked or cycled to work. They might have picked up a healthy breakfast and be in the routine for that. Work might have been supplying certain things, and lunch, it was all planned out. Suddenly you're at home. A lot of people sitting in the kitchen working, so constant access to food, and then we're feeling sorry for ourselves, which is fair enough. But then, it's sweets and treats, and alcohol went up, and exercise went down. And I had good fun, like a lot of people, reading people on social media, and they're like, "Oh, I'm getting an extra 10k running every week," and all the rest. And everyone's going, "Yeah, you're not doing that with two kids homeschooling." So for some people, it actually was good, and I saw some people really kick out alcohol and do more exercise. But I think most people, fruit and veg went down, snacking went through the roof, and not snacking on good stuff. A lot of people stopped hydrating, actually fell out. You'd think sitting in the kitchen, you'd be drinking more water, but a lot of people found they were more likely to be hitting coffees and things like that. So a little bit more dehydrated. And of course, alcohol certainly went up. So one of the tips that I would say to people, if you're still struggling with it at this stage, is actually to do a daily menu for yourself, and to sit down, maybe if you have a bit of time on a weekend, and spend an hour and actually just plan out breakfast, lunch and dinner. And when you actually plan it that way, you don't just think about the protein, because I think often when we are planning a meal, we'll go, well, I'm having steak, or I'm having chickpeas, or I'm having, but plan the whole meal. What's the vegetable? What's the carbohydrate going to be? Can the carbohydrate be a high fiber one? Are we getting, a third to half the plate vegetables? So that you plan the whole meal. But the trick then is to take your menu and go shopping, so that you have it in the house. So you're not arriving at dinner time and thinking, oh my God, I haven't got the 10 things I need, that it's there. And then you're not going to the supermarket 5 times a week and buying more treats every time you're in there. So planning actually makes a huge difference.
I totally agree with that, and I think that the flexibility that we had initially with not having to go to the office, it kind of encouraged us to fall out of some of those habits and routines we had around breakfast, lunch and dinner. And as you've said there, actually structuring that again for ourselves and holding ourselves to that, keeping ourselves accountable to that, is an easy way to start stepping back into some of those good habits. And then if we're thinking long term and trying to keep habits and make them sustainable, what's your advice around that for people, Sarah, when it comes to nutrition, trying to keep those habits long term?
Well, I think the trickiest thing for nutrition is people tend to be all or nothing. So people tend to have sort of maybe their bad habits going on, and they decide, right, this Monday morning, I'm changing everything. I'm throwing out every bad food in the house. I'm buying the entire fruit and veg out of the local supermarket. And they try and do too much. And I think with nutrition, people forget that you can have like 30, 40, 50 habits around your nutrition. And, if you think you're going to change all of those overnight, it's not going to happen. So what you can do is you pick one or two, but no more than that. And you actually spend 3 weeks really building that in. So you might say to yourself, look, I need to eat more fruit and veg. What specifically am I going to do? Because that's very up in the air. Oh, I'll eat more fruit and veg. Go, I'm going to have fruit with breakfast every single day. And then you plan, what's the fruit I'm going to have? How am I going to eat it? What do I actually like? For me, I actually don't like a whole lot of fruit, but I love grapefruit. So I'll have grapefruit in the morning because I actually like that. But it's just to do that. But give yourself time to build that habit in. And then when you have that habit planned and working for you, then build the next one. And it's just, don't be in such a rush. So often we see the magazines and they're like, get ripped in 1 month, and you're like, yeah, right, okay, give it a year. So if you take a habit, but if you think of one new habit every 2 to 3 weeks, that's a lot of new habits at the end of 1 year. And the thing is, because you've really worked on them and planned them and established them, they're more likely to stay with you than if you try and change everything for a week, because by Friday, most people are done.
Exactly. And I wonder what that shift in mindset looks like, Sarah, with some of your clients, because I think we have naturally that all or nothing mindset that you mentioned. Like I see it in the exercise space, where people will decide, I've gone from doing no exercise 1 week and I'm going to jump into the 60 minutes, and by the end of that week they're so sore, they're just like, right, it's not worth it, this exercise thing. But actually trying to get clients into that mindset that, listen, actually those small changes, it's like that theory of marginal gains, where if I do small incremental changes, it adds up to something big over time. How would you try and encourage your clients to make that mindset shift?
I suppose for me, by the time people actually have picked up the phone to see a dietitian, they've usually tried lots and lots of other things. So it's often when you're having a conversation with somebody, and particularly if it's about something like weight loss, and you're saying, well, what have you done before? And what worked? And so many people, well, I did this diet, I lost all this weight. And I go, well, how long did that actually stay off? And they go, well, about 2 weeks. I was going, so it didn't work. And it's just to get people the idea that the crash diet, you might get this instant weight loss, but if it was back on in 2 weeks, it didn't work. So to kind of go, look, you've tried the all or nothing, let's try building the habits. And it can take it is a change in a mindset. So it can be difficult for people to wrap their head around, because again, what we see on social media, what we see in magazines is, this, lose 9 pounds in 1 week, and that all sounds great, but we all know that's back on in a couple of weeks. So you're kind of going one step really well established. And also as well, I think, and you probably see this as well, people get obsessed with calories, or they get obsessed with protein. And you think, actually, nutrition and health is so many things, and you don't have to pick the most difficult thing first. If someone comes into me and they love chocolate, the first thing they go, so I'll have to give up the chocolate. And I'm going, why would you pick the most difficult thing? There's actually 10 other things that will give you the same results, and you're not actually torturing yourself. So sometimes it's finding those easier habits that will actually have the same impact, but without torturing you.
And I actually got an interesting one there. It's just when you mention about the 0 calories and people being obsessed with these no calorie foods, which is it's a marketer's dream, first of all, but we all as human beings can fall foul to the marketing strategies, not just in the nutrition world.
Everything.
But, But I got an interesting question yesterday, actually, while I was doing a session for Irish Life Health, and in my head I was thinking, wouldn't it have been great to have Sarah beside me for this question? But the individual asked about the importance of our microbiome and our gut bacteria and the direct link then it has to our mental health. And it's just when you brought up the idea of 0 calories and trying to avoid that trap and the importance of the nutritional content in food, I wonder if you could speak a little bit to the importance of our microbiome for some of the viewers.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in terms of nutrition and science research over the last sort of 30, 40 years, the bacteria living in the digestive system we're realizing they're more and more important all the time. Now, I read loads of things about gut bacteria, and they're going to do everything in world peace and save the environment and everything. I would tell you, we are at least 150 years away from fully understanding the gut bacteria. So when you hear all kinds of mad claims about gut bacteria, everybody just take a step back and just breathe a little bit. So what do we know for sure about gut bacteria? We know that they regulate our immune system. So that means they help to keep it working at a level that helps to fight infection. They also stop it from overreacting, because an overreacting immune system is food allergies and autoimmune disease. So I see all these things on boost your immune system. You don't want to boost your immune system. You want to just nice and steady. So we know that having healthy gut bacteria do help to regulate the immune system. There's really interesting work now that it also helps to regulate appetite and probably how different nutrients are stored in the body. So we do know that different gut bacteria do have an enormous impact on weight. And there's a really interesting study running in the States at the moment where they're doing, I'm going to lower the tone here hugely, but they're doing food transplants at the moment. So they're taking basically gut bacteria from slim people and giving it to overweight people. Now, it's a lot more complicated than that, so don't try this at home, right? But they actually are resulting in huge weight loss. And what's more, it's keeping, so more than 2 years of the weight loss maintaining. So really, really interesting for that. So the thing about gut bacteria, I again see lots of products going, oh my God, take this and your gut bacteria will be amazing. You feed your gut bacteria with fiber. So a high fiber diet with lots of different sources of fiber is all you need to do for a nice, healthy gut bacteria. And at the moment in Ireland, about 80% of us don't eat enough fiber. And that's one of the big things to look at. And so it's really good to get some cereal fiber in, so whole grains, whole grain bread, whole grain cereals, but also to get the type of fiber like pectins that you get in fruit and veg, to look at things like beta glucans that you're going to get in things like barley and oats. Even really interesting studies recently looking at the fibers in peas and the particular bacteria that feeds. So if you really think like you're feeding your pets, different forms of fiber with that. So it is having, and as you mentioned, even on mood, we're seeing big links between good digestive health and good mental health as well.
And I think it's such an easy step to make, or such a simple thing to do, to increase the fiber in our diet, and it actually has such an impact. But again, I think it comes back to that mindset shift a little bit, doesn't it? Yeah. Where we often view nutrition as, well, what do I need to take out of my diet?
Yes.
What do I need to reduce? Where actually, would you say that we should start to view it on the other side and think,
And absolutely, and that's the thing that I suppose for me when I'm working with clients, I will focus so much more on what you're going to add in than what you take out, because we have this, I must not eat cream and cakes and biscuits and all this, and that's fine. But I see people and they've cut all these things out, but they're still missing so much. So yes, bring in the fiber. And I think the problem with fiber at the moment is it's not sexy. There's nobody running around we have the people who are obsessed with low carb, and that's fair enough if you're into it, but it's nearly like a religion for some people, but nobody's got that obsession going with fiber. And even if you do, it's just not sexy, because it's basically poo and all the rest, and yet when we look, people eating a high fiber diet find it easier to lose weight. They find it easier to keep weight off. They have fewer digestive problems, like they get less appendicitis, they get less diverticular disease, their irritable bowel is often a lot better, not always, but but so many things that we would see in terms of immediate and long-term health. Fiber is amazing, and yet, as I said, we're not hitting targets for it. And the thing I find is, though, everyone I speak to thinks they're eating enough fiber, but most people are not. So very few. The amount of people I've seen in clinics over the years with constipation, and let's say I eat loads of fiber, don't know why I'm constipated, and then you look at it and you're only about a third of what you need, but we think we do. So if you look at something like a bowl of high fiber cereal, will give you about 3 grams of fiber, and you need to be getting 25 grams of fiber a day. Then you can get some idea of where we might be missing out. But if I could get people to do anything, it's often the first place I start with anybody is get the fiber in.
And it brings back that idea of the importance of planning and having that plan as you head into the week. As you've mentioned at the start there, if we've got a plan for breakfast, for lunch and for dinner, we can then include the X amount of fiber that we might need across that week. And I'm just interested because obviously you're giving us so much good information here on the topic of nutrition, Sarah. Obviously, we're bombarded, and we mentioned that at the start, we're bombarded a little bit with social media, and there's a lot of information there that can maybe lead us down the wrong path when it comes to managing our nutrition. Where would you say are good resources or good places to go to get the information that we need around our nutrition for viewers that are tuning in today?
I think it's a really good question, and it's actually not many places that I would confidently recommend. In fact, every so often I do a troll through the books on the bookshelves in shops on nutrition, and there's very, very few that don't have major mistakes in them. So I'd watch that. There's a website, the INDI, so it's the Irish Nutrition and Dietetic Institute, so it's indi.ie, and they have really good fact sheets on various topics in nutrition that are very, very evidence and science-based, and they're excellent. And another very good website to have a look at. Now, you probably need to sort of be in the hole of your health to find everything that you want on it, but the FSAI, which is the Food Safety Authority of Ireland, now they do a lot on regulation around nutrition, but they write some excellent information on nutrition. Now, it's a little more detailed, so it might be for someone who's a bit more interested in nutrition. They have some great reports, say, on child nutrition, infant feeding guidelines and things like that. I think the problem is that when you write sensible stuff on nutrition, it doesn't get the clickbait headlines that, oh, it's going to cure your immunity and, reverse male pattern balding and all those kind of things. I often see people kind of say to you, oh, the food pyramid is terrible. And you're kind of going, oh, will you please not fall into that trap? Because, okay, the food pyramid is population health guidelines, so it's not going to be perfect for every single person. However, as a basic guideline, it's actually incredibly well researched. People don't realize what goes into it. They kind of think, oh, someone just stuck a load of carbohydrate on it and ran from there. But if you look at carbohydrate on the Irish food pyramid, like if you take a standard Irish dinner plate and you cover it with pasta, that is more carbohydrate than is actually on the entire Irish food pyramid. And the problem is most people don't actually read the portion sizes. They read some social media outlet that's criticizing it. And what we forget, particularly with things like the food pyramid, is one of the biggest things they focus on with that is not actually calories or obesity, it's actually iron. Because we have a huge issue with iron deficiency in Ireland. 79% of teenage girls don't hit their targets for iron. 48% of adult women don't hit their targets for iron. And they have huge impacts across the board. So, sometimes people are so busy looking at the food pyramid from a weight or obesity point of view, they forget all of the nutrition, the bone health, the brain health, the iron, all of those things. So that kind of guidance where we look at, the 5 to 7 servings of fruit and veg a day, the 3 servings of calcium-rich foods a day, the 2 to 3 servings of protein-rich foods a day. Like, if you actually pull it out, it is what's being said elsewhere, but just wasn't packaged up. So, if you're really getting started, don't just look at the food pyramid, go in and have a look on the Healthy Ireland website and just read some of the portion sizes for it, because then it will start to make a lot more sense. And that's actually, as a basic start, it's not a bad guide at all.
Yeah, I think it really speaks, for me, when I think of the nutrition industry, I think of all the myths that we come across. And some of them, like one that you mentioned there, when people look at the food pyramid and they see all of that carbohydrate, and then we hear in the media that, okay, in order to get the ideal body, you need to cut out your carbohydrates. And then we get told, obviously, that sugar is the enemy, and then we find out that that sugar is a carbohydrate, and all of a sudden carbohydrates in our mind are bad. But actually, as you've mentioned there, it's more the idea that the overconsumption of calories due to the portions is what becomes the issue. I'm interested to know from your work, what other myths do you come across and think, oh my God, that's just, you cringe when you hear it?
Well, I'm going to go back to the carbohydrate, because carbohydrate is such an interesting, because it's such this vast array of food, and within carbohydrate you have everything from the whole grains right the way through to the sugar, and technically they're all carbohydrate. I would say sugar is not on the bottom shelf of the food pyramid, but when we're talking about carbohydrates, we're really looking at the high fiber and the whole grains, because apart from carbohydrate, they have the fiber and the B vitamins and the magnesium and the copper and all those other nutrients. So the package of nutrition you get from whole grains is so completely different from sugar, which is just carbohydrate. So we technically, scientifically, they'd be in there, but they're so very different in how the body handles them. And we look at the food matrix as well, which is important. And if I was going to roll my eyes on something at the moment, the one that drives me crazy these days is the idea that we should all give up dairy because it's terribly bad for you, and you should get all your calcium from green vegetables instead. So the funny thing about a lot of stuff in nutrition is you'll often see sort of scientific debates coming on and papers coming out, and you might have discussions on certain things. But with the dairy, there's no question about the dairy being very healthy, which is really interesting, because people often say to me, oh, it's all funded by the dairy industry. I say, well, some of it is, yes, but most of it actually isn't. And I hate the idea that every single scientist leaves university and drops all of their ethics. I think it's a terrible thing to say about an awful lot of very nice people. So what I hear about myths in dairy would be that it causes cancer. And I'm going to just put that one to bed straight away, because massive studies that we have looking at cancer, and one that people can take a look at is called EPIC, which is the European Prospective Investigation into Cancer. And they've been tracking over 500,000 people now for the last 25 years. And they're looking at what are we seeing linked with cancer or not. So this is where we're seeing processed red meat linked with cancer. It's where we're seeing alcohol linked with cancer. But it's where we're also seeing that eating fiber reduces cancer. But also, if you eat dairy, particularly milk, cheese, and yogurt, so the calcium ones, that sees a reduction in colon cancer, and we don't see an increase in cancer anywhere else. So what we're actually finding from the data we have is that dairy actually reduces cancer rather than increases it. And yet, if you go online, you'll see all over the place that dairy causes cancer. So the actual science doesn't support that. The other thing is, you're not going to get all your calcium from green veg. You're just not. You would have to eat 16 servings of broccoli a day to get your calcium. And someone was having an argument with me about this recently. They sent me this kind of postcard thing, and it was like a glass of milk and a handful of rocket, and they were going, if you weigh out milk and you weigh out rocket, gram for gram, it has the same amount of calcium, right? Which is actually true, right? But if you think of rocket, the bag of rocket you get in the supermarket, you have to eat about 7 of those a day to get your calcium. So while there's calcium in the green veg, it's very difficult to physically eat the amounts you need to get your calcium. So it's, yes, absolutely eat your green veg. They have so many benefits, but really, if you're not taking dairy, check very, very carefully that you're getting your calcium. Because we do see, for example, in kids who have dairy allergies, which most kids grow out of if they have it, but when they have it, by the age of 5 and even by the age of 15, their bones are smaller and they're not as strong. So even though they might be getting calcium from other places, the dairy source of calcium is really, really important and significant for bone health.
And I think what you've just mentioned there really speaks to the point of getting the right information from the right people, because I don't know if you've come across the recent documentary that's on Netflix that everybody's talking about, The Social Dilemma. It's not a nutrition one, sorry. It's more about social media and the impact of social media. But actually, it gives a very good point that Google can't really tell between fact and fiction.
Yes.
So if you put something in there that gets enough clicks, as you've said, you could find tons of little articles around why dairy is bad and we shouldn't eat it, but actually none of it really is guided by the right individuals. So I think it's a great point to bring up, to be careful.
I think it comes back to, because people say to me, how do you know? I said, well, it's very simple. Are they a registered dietitian? Yes. Registered dietitians in countries across the world. So, if you look at someone writing an article, and if it sounds really out there or very different or contrary to sort of standard wisdom, it's worth going, who's writing this? And I suppose the thing I see for a lot of confusion recently is, a lot of doctors that would start to talk about nutrition. And while doctors have phenomenal training, God love them, they spend absolute years at university and studying, they get no nutrition training. So just because a doctor is saying something on nutrition doesn't mean it's correct. And that's something, because people say to me, well, my doctor said, and you're kind of very gently sometimes going, mightn't be accurate,
Yes.
Sometimes the doctors are getting stuff from the same, social media that everybody else is. And I said, it's no disrespect to doctors who do phenomenal medical training, but the nutrition isn't there on the course. So I would say check, is it a dietitian speaking? And then check who is, because, sometimes are they just trying to sell a book? Are they trying to sell a product? What's actually going on with this? Because it's very easy to get sucked in with things. And I think you've seen that as well with clients. And it's just to sort of pause the brakes and go, hang on, we've actually eaten dairy for years. We're generally fine. There's a bit of a question mark about butter and things like that, unfortunately. But, the calcium ones are just incredibly important.
Yeah, there's definitely a general consensus among dietitians and health professionals that if we just revert back to some of the things that we did years ago, we would actually start to steer ourselves in the right direction again in terms of our health. There's one cohort of individuals here at the moment, and I'm talking parents here. With the kids going back to school, it can be a tough time because you've got yourself into a routine, and now all of a sudden the routine is disrupted again. Although I'm sure some parents are delighted to have that little bit of time back for themselves.
A little bit, yeah.
What advice would you have though for parents now who have the school run, maybe have to go then pick the kids up, but yet still want to cook those good quality, helpful, healthy meals in the evening time? Have you any tips for parents at the moment?
Well, I mean, to be honest, you're back to planning again. And it's the thing, luckily I don't think anybody has homework at the moment, and that has just been an absolute godsend. They're threatening to start it up in October, and I think I'm going to start a petition going, please don't. But you're trying to do, I mean, there aren't as many after school activities and all of that, but we still have all that going on. And what I'd say is plan a little bit, because then again, the food is ready for you to cook, and you can plan things that are quick. I have to say, I'm a really big fan of stews and casseroles and all of that, because although they take 2 hours to actually cook, the work of them is only about 15 minutes. And that's why they're, for me, brilliant. Now, I think like a lot of people, I'm still working from home. So I can kind of go down and chop all that and throw it in the oven, and then it's in 2 hours. And it's, and plus it reheats. If you do it at night, the stews are always nicer the next day anyway. So I would plan a little bit. I'd look at some of the slow cooking, but I would also say to parents, will you give yourself a break? This trying to be super parent is killing an awful lot of people. It really is just knocking them out. And the odd night, if you go and get a pizza or something like that, it's not actually going to wipe out. You often think kids have 21 meals a week. If one of them is a takeaway, it is not a catastrophe. I think the mental health of parents, and particularly, whether we like it or not, more often than not, it is the women who are working all day and then trying to look after nutrition. And it's not just the actual cooking, but it's even the mental pressure of thinking, well, have I got this? Have I got that done? Is it healthy? How are they getting on? Will they eat it? Who's going to be fussy? So I think we need to just say to ourselves, give yourself a break a little bit. If they have a good breakfast, half decent lunch, dinner is right most of the time. You can have the odd day off. And, in my house, is the odd day, I'll just say, look, I'm not cooking tonight. You can all make sandwiches. And my kids are well trained at this stage to cook eggs and do stuff like that. So, you have to be a bit self-sufficient.
Yeah, no, I would certainly agree with that, especially the point around obviously just being kinder to yourself at the moment, especially even when I think about the side of exercise. I think there could be a lot of guilt and judgment there. If we'd started a program and we miss an exercise session, we can start to let those little negative feelings eat away at us. And it's important just to always remember that, listen, tomorrow is another day, we can start again. And that's the same for nutrition, exercise, sleep, whatever the healthy habits might be. We have a little question in here, Sarah, just from one of the individuals who's on with us at the moment, and they've just basically said that obviously the first really good tip they've taken from today's session was around structure, and then the first practical tip was to eat more fibre, and they just want to know what maybe other one or two initial tips or steps would you recommend for people when it comes to changing up their nutrition a little bit.
Okay, I would look at snacking. I'm in my mid-40s now, but when I was growing up, snacking didn't exist. And I don't know the ages of the people watching this, but I know if I talk to people under 35, they give me a funny look. But I think snacking wasn't invented till I was about 25. So you had breakfast, lunch, dinner, and that was it. And a couple of my friends, we have been laughing at intermittent fasting over the last while, because people are like, oh my God, you do this overnight fast, you have your dinner, and then you don't eat again to breakfast in the morning. You're going, yeah, like we used to. I didn't realize we were intermittent fasting when I was 8 years of age, but obviously we were. So the thing about snacking is, as I say, when I was growing up, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and that was it. And we weren't getting this low blood sugar in the afternoon, and we weren't getting this, energy deficit, all of this stuff that I keep hearing about. Seriously, you don't need the snacks. Now, you might, if you're doing a lot of exercise, yes, you might need a little more snack. But if you are snacking, and that means that picking all day long, will you just stop? Your teeth need a break more than anything else. Your stomach needs a break as well. And a lot of the time, we're not hungry. And I'd love if people lost this mindset of snacking. Why are we suddenly thinking we need to snack? Yeah. What are the snack foods? I go into a garage and look at what's available for snacks, and I tell you very little of it is nice, healthy fruit and veg. Now, some places are better than others. So the snacking is about selling sugar, and it's about selling crispy carbohydrates, and that's what snacking is mostly about. So if you're snacking on biscuits and you're snacking on cakes and you're snacking on crisps and sweets, you're not hungry. You're just passing the time. So I would really rethink your snacking. And if you are hungry that you need a snack, look at, can I get some fiber in there? Can I get a handful of nuts? Can I get some dried fruit? Now, I wouldn't eat dried fruit all day long because it's not good for your teeth, but it's nutritious. Can I get something whole grain in there? If all you want is sweets and biscuits, you're generally thirsty, go and do something else. What was the other habit I had? A lovely one I'd often say to people is your body's actually really, really good at telling you how much food you need to eat every day. However, we ignore it. And a lovely habit to get into is when you're actually sitting down, particularly with dinner, is to notice when you're eating, where in the meal you actually start to feel full. Because a lot of us will kind of go, there's a moment where I'm kind of feeling a bit full, but there's a bit left and I have to eat it. And I think we're all brought up to clear the plate. Whereas a lovely thing to do is trust your body. When your body is saying to you, I'm kind of done here, leave it. Now, if you're leaving a lot, will you start putting less on your plate the next day? Because we don't get into wasting food. But, if it's a mouthful or two, do leave it. 2 mouthfuls a day will put on 4 stone over 10 years. So
that's
it's just, isn't it?
Yes.
And that's where weight is slow, you know. So it's just to kind of say to yourself, look, I'm actually starting to feel a bit full, leave it. And my favorite one is if I'm talking to people and go, have you ever had to take a rest in the middle of a meal? And people go, yes. If your body has actually ground you to a halt for a rest, right? It's really trying to tell you something, you know? So just to let that happen, don't automatically finish everything. Let your body guide you, because it's actually very good at it.
I think it's incredible what you've just mentioned there, the two things, because in today's society, we call the first one intermittent fasting now, which again, as you say, it was just 3 meals, and go back to your 3 meals, which is a great piece of advice. And then the second one, I think we call it now in today's society, mindful eating. When you're actually eating your breakfast or eating your lunch, just be present, just focus on the food, so that you start to pick up those cues that you are a little bit full and you may not need to finish that plate. So again, it seems that the constant message is bring it back a little bit to the basics, and that's one of the keys around nutritional well-being. And actually, just for any of the listeners, that's one of the great things about the My Life app, is that there's a coach built into the app, and it can just give you those cues on a regular basis to go back to some of those basics, like drinking water, eating at the appropriate times. That's one thing I find that my clients really love about the app itself, is just that coach that's there to guide you throughout the day. Sarah, I'm interested just to look at the idea of when we start to make changes with our nutrition. And I know we're speaking about nutritional well-being today, but from your experience with clients, what other changes do you generally see that making a couple of small changes with your nutrition can spark in other areas of people's lives?
I love when people start to build in their exercise. And, you know, I'm certainly not an exercise expert in any way, but you can't sit in a clinic with someone who's talking about heart disease or diabetes or anything and not say, look, you have to get them, because it's just tied in together. I often find people have the idea they're very tired or they're very run down, and sometimes, you know, they think, I think you hit the nail on the head there. They think, I'm not going to the gym 5 times a week. And I've had people say that to me. I was only going to get 3 times a week, so I didn't bother going at all this week. Like, you know, and for me, it's trying to get the concept across that even 5 minutes will have benefit. And, you know, if you're very unfit, and I have worked with people, God loves them, for various reasons, are really just at a very, very low level of fitness, but just to even walk up the stairs twice or walk around the house twice and just build. But I think, and I don't know, maybe you can help with this, I find a lot of people are very self-conscious. You know, I've had clients over the years who want to lose weight, who love swimming, but they will, because of weight stigma, because we are actually, you know, as a country and a world, very, very horrible to and about people who have weight, that people don't want to get into a swimsuit because someone will make a comment, or they don't want to go jogging because people will actually yell out car windows at them. And I think that could be something we can change. But I suppose for my own sort of clients that I've worked with, when nutrition improves, energy levels improve. And then when energy levels improve, they're a little better to do a bit of walking. And because food is so tied into even how our brain functions, I often think you can just see that click in the brain where they kind of just get that little more confidence to get into the swimsuit or, you know, go out and go. But I think sometimes we underestimate how hard it is for people, particularly who are struggling with weight, to actually exercise, to go to somewhere like a gym. I suppose I always remember I've been doing a yoga class for years, and you know, we've been a fairly consistent group. It's a small group locally, but every so often a new person comes in and we're all doing our yoga, and you can see that person going, oh my God, they're all laughing at me. And every single one of us in the room are going, God, I remember when that was me.
Yes.
You know, and I think sometimes we're a bit nicer, you know, and it's just to be, I think, more welcoming with exercise. But yeah, I think, and I'm sure you can probably advise people on that if you're starting from zero fitness, which quite a few people are, what is the best way? I mean, how often and what and where can they start?
Yeah, I think for me, Sarah, there's always 2 elements to this. And I think the first element really is, and I hear it a lot, so I'm sure you hear it, is clients will say, I'm going to start with the nutrition and then I'll get to the exercise. But for me, I think there's always a hidden message there for them, that exactly what you said. I'm actually a little maybe I'm a little lacking in a little self-confidence when it comes to my exercise, because when I think of exercise, I think, you know, somebody in the gym lifting heavy weights and trying to the whole no pain no gain element. So for anybody who's really trying to get into exercise, always remember to take a consistency over intensity approach. It's more that you're actually out there doing something, whether it's a walk if you're starting out, and then you can get in, as you continue to progress with your fitness levels, you can bring in some resistance training. But always remember, you said it, Sarah, it's the idea that if I can't get the 5 sessions in, I'm not going to do the 3. don't underestimate the power of just bringing in more walking in your day. There's tons of studies, tons of research. But the biggest one that actually stands out for me is around adherence to exercise. And we can see that somebody who actually exercises at a moderate intensity, so not the crazy stuff you see in the gym, they are the people far more likely to continue exercising long term. So you don't have to view it as, if I'm not suffering, it's not working, because trust me, it really is. And I think just the second piece to mention to people when it comes to exercise, and I like to use a little analogy around this, is if we went for a run last night, if we did set out to do 5 kilometers and we got 3 kilometers in and we just said, right, I'm wrecked, that's enough for me today. After I've gone home and I've showered and I'm sitting down on the couch watching Netflix, what pops into my mind? Is it the 3 kilometers that I did and I think, well done today? Or is it the 2 kilometers that I didn't do? Well, generally for people, the obvious answer is I start to fixate on the 2 kilometers I didn't do. I start to get those negative feelings of, I set out to do 5 and I only did 3. Why couldn't I get the last 2 in? I'm not disciplined, I haven't got the willpower. And we need to really let that go. We need to try and attach positive emotions to every exercise session that we do. So if you go out tonight and you do your 5k run and for whatever reason you only get 3, give yourself a pat on the back, because if you create that positive emotion, you're far more likely to get out again and do it tomorrow. Don't be comparing yourself to anybody else. Just view yourself and know that every time you get out and you get some movement in, you're actually benefiting not just you, but also even the individuals around you. So it's those 2 pieces for me, Sarah. It's just getting out and taking the consistency over intensity approach. And the second piece would be try and pat yourself on the back no matter what form of exercise it is you actually do.
And I think you're right, and I think that applies to nutrition as well, because over the years I'd have so many people come in and going, oh my God, I had a terrible day yesterday, and you'd be going, okay, calm down, because people get upset. And like, what was breakfast? And they tell you breakfast was great, and they do lunch and it was great, and then they do dinner and it was great, and I'm kind of going, what was bad? And oh, well, I had a bar of chocolate. And you're thinking, you got 90% of the day right. If you got 90% on an exam, you'd actually think you did really well. But we do exactly that. You know, I didn't get the full 5k. And I suppose what you said about don't compare yourself to other people is so important, because people post their success online. They do not post their failure online.
Very good.
And you know, if you only say, oh my God, they got all that done, they didn't go in on the day when it went pear-shaped. They just didn't post and they said nothing. So, you know, and I do that myself, even because I'm one of these mad people who actually likes going to the gym. I'm not particularly intense, but I enjoy it. But there would be days when I'd be doing something, I go, oh, I'm just done. And I know for me, I'm far better off just to walk out the door and be okay than force myself and get really cross with the whole thing. And then I'm less likely to want to come back. So I agree, you have to have that positive feeling. And for nutrition as well, you know, yeah, you're going to eat stuff that isn't perfect, but you know, get it right most of the time. Give yourself a break, you know.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
I love you, Mark, as well, because I see so many people, and what I love is the people who would come into me in May because they're going on holidays in June and they want to have the perfect beach body in a month. And you know, over the years, my own observation now, and you can probably correct me on this, is it takes actually about 3 years to go from someone who's quite unfit with very little muscle tone and a lot of weight to lose to actually be that really well toned. Because I know from talking to runners, and they'd say it's actually about 3 years before you're really going to have your best time if you're doing 10Ks or something like that. So, you know.
Yeah, I think to answer that one, it's, for me, it really comes back down to the real reasons for doing this. So whether it's making nutrition changes, whether it's trying to get yourself in the best shape of your life or to increase your energy levels, it's really trying to attach it back to reasons that, as I like to say, will get you out of bed at 6 a.m. in the morning when the alarm goes off, especially in these dark winter months. That was one of the questions I was asked yesterday. How do you combat that, Mark, when those dark mornings come back in? For me, it is going a little deeper, and you mentioned it briefly at the start as well, sir. It's this idea of maybe I need to look at exercise and look at nutrition a little bit differently. It's not just a tool to help me maybe lose a little bit of weight. Yes, that can happen and that's very helpful, but actually think of all of the other benefits that go along with exercising regularly. So we might have a short-term goal, which could be the holiday that's coming up, but I often find when we take that carrot or stick approach, it's very short-term. It doesn't last. And we want it to last because actually we know that if we can get into a regular routine of activity, nutrition, good sleep, we can flourish in all the areas of our life. So for me with clients, I always say take time in terms of the goal setting process and look at goals not just based around performance. So a performance goal would be, I want to lose 5K, or I want to run 5K. But I often say, and it brings back in the planning piece that you mentioned, you've got to look at your process goals. So what are you going to do week to week that's going to help you achieve the 5 kilo weight loss or the 5 kilometer run? But then I need you to go even further, and I want you to think, what's the ultimate outcome goal here? So what are the reasons for you to exercise regularly? And if the only reason you can think of is, I want to lose 5 kilos, it's not going to get you up when that alarm clock goes off at 6 a.m. So think about, okay, do I want to be fitter and healthier for my children, to be a role model to them? Whatever it is for you, do you want to perform better in work? Because we know regular activity and good nutrition is going to allow that. So it's trying to tie it to something that's deeper, a real purpose, something that aligns with who we are. I think that's and really forgetting, like you said, 3 years, listen, like for us to turn around and say, yeah, you can do it in 4 weeks, you can do it in 6 weeks. My answer to that would be, why do you want to do it in 4 weeks and 6 weeks? Because once you start to experience the benefits, you're going to want to do it for the rest of your life. But remove the guilt and remove the judgment, because they just become barriers to any progress for you.
And it is, and I think people get frustrated because they don't see these magical results very, very quickly, you know.
Yeah.
And I see people, and they, particularly women are trying to lose weight off their hips, and men are trying to lose the belly, and you're going, that's the last place it's going to come off.
Yes.
It's the last place. You'll see it lose from everywhere else first. And I think people, as you said, they're very hard on themselves, but they forget. I would always love nutrition to move away from just weight, and I think the same for exercise. For it's this idea that it's just for weight loss, because then people would say, well, if I'm at a healthy weight, then I don't need to exercise, or if I'm at a healthy weight, then I don't need to eat well. And you're going, no, because what about your bones and your muscle and your long term? And I work a lot with the Retirement Planning Council of Ireland, and I do courses with them on sort of health in retirement. And one thing, and I'm talking to people maybe in their late 50s, early 60s, who have done nothing more than walk for 20 years. They've done now walking is brilliant. But you're talking about what's your balance as you get older. Are you going to be falling over? Are you going to be able to get yourself out of bed in the morning? Are you going to be able to get off the floor if you fall over? And people are like, oh God, I haven't thought of that. And, so it's not just about now. It's like, what body are you going to have in your 60s and 70s and 80s that you're nice and strong? I remember one physiotherapist saying to me, can you still get yourself off the toilet on your own? And everyone, yes. And said, do you still want to be doing that when you're 70? And I said, yes. You need that strength. And I suppose one that struck for me, I had a family member there about 2 years ago, God love her, she got breast cancer and she had a double mastectomy. And unfortunately, they couldn't do any reconstruction surgery for her because she'd no muscle across her chest. And women generally don't, because we don't do a whole lot of upper body strength. And I just thought, that was it was very hard, and it was something I hadn't thought about even from that. Now, I'm not saying we all have to exercise in case we get breast cancer, but it's more just, there's a lot more to having a body that is looked after than just weight loss. And I think we need to look at our strength now, our balance, but our mental health as well. As you hit the nail on the head with that, you don't just exercise to lose weight, but there's that lovely mental health, that concentration at work, which I think is just fantastic. So if people are looking for more information on exercise, like where's a good place to go? I think a bit like the nutrition, what's a good source?
Yeah, for me, I obviously ourselves, and actually Irish Life and Irish Life Health through the My Life app. There's some fantastic videos that we at Fit Vision did recently for workout routines that you can do in the comfort of your own home, and just guidelines. So I would definitely recommend that to be a good place to start for me. And I think as well, the big message around exercise is don't overcomplicate it. Get yourself out for walks, for runs. Like, yes, resistance training is like taking that next step up, but actually you don't have to do resistance training in a gym. You can do it at home, squats, push-ups, planks, and as long as you've got the right resources, the right tutorial videos, if you like, it's very easy to guide yourself through. Like, not every person needs to go to the trainer to try and to get the workout in. In fact, I actually prefer when my clients eventually turn around to me and say, Mark, you know what, I think I can do this on my own now. And it's kind of like, high five, there you go, out you go, I'm delighted. So it's about trying to maybe just move up in those levels, but being kind with yourself as you move through those levels. I think you mentioned something really good, sir, and it was the idea of motivation. And I think every now and again it's good to try and create a little bit of that healthy anxiety for ourselves to motivate ourselves.
Yeah.
I hate the idea of actually being that motivational source for anybody else, because I know that that's not going to last long term, and it's nearly like try and foster that within yourself. And what's going to actually create that motivation for you? What could be that healthy anxiety or that reward, if we want to look at it in a more positive light? So I'm just conscious, Sarah, we're coming towards the end of our session, and you've given us so much good information around nutrition today. Would you have any final takeaways for individuals from today's session?
I mean, I think you have hit the nail on the head with we need to be a little easier on ourselves, and that nutrition doesn't have to be perfect any more than exercise has to be perfect. It's being consistent, and that's the trick you'll often see with people, that the people who are the most successful, for example, in losing weight and I'm sure getting fit, are not the people who have it perfect all the time. They're the people who just keep coming back to it. And to allow yourself, and it's okay to have a bad day, and I hate even calling it a bad day, like a human day where you just have a few glasses of wine. I often think there's food for your body and food for your soul, and sometimes they're the same thing, but not always.
Absolutely, what a great way. Yeah.
So, but I also really liked one thing she said, because I see it a lot, was do you want to be fit for your own kids and to be out playing with them and out running around on them and with them and all that. And I'm laughing about my broken toe. I think I was telling you I broke it playing football on the trampoline with my kids there last week. And I thought, while I'm going stupid and never do that again, it was nice to be in the position of actually being fit enough to be out and about jumping on a trampoline and playing football with my kids. And I get lots of people, and I'm sure you do too, in clinics where that's their goal. They've never been interested in weight or health, but suddenly they have kids and they think, I don't want to die of a heart attack when they're 15. I don't want to. Yeah, and I want to be like, I remember one lady, and she said, I just want to be able to get down on the floor, play with my kids, and get back up again. And she was just struggling, and it was just brilliant to see her after. Now, it did take about 6 months, but to get to that. So you have to find a motivation, and I agree with you, that will keep you going long term. And I do tell you, what you look like is really motivating for very few people when it comes to health.
Very true.
What you feel like is what usually gets people going.
Brilliant, Sarah. And listen, thank you very much for sharing all the insights today. I'm sure listeners have taken so much from our conversation. Just guys, just before we finish, just a reminder to all of the teams that are taking part in the challenge at the moment, keep it going. Keep getting those steps in every day. See who will become my life's fittest company. And for all of the individuals, remember, it's roughly about 10,000 steps a day that we're aiming for to go in with a chance to win one of those Fitbits. So aim to hit those 10,000 steps each day. And the last reminder, guys, is our third webinar in this series. It's all about financial well-being with financial advisor Kevin Clark on the 7th of October at 12 p.m. And again, thank you all for tuning in today. I hope you've enjoyed our